Okay, stop me if you've heard this before. Chrono Trigger is one of the greatest video games of all time.
Bravely second!
You all know about Chrono Trigger's legacy. There are a billion videos praising it as a masterpiece, and it'd be redundant to add another to the pile. That being said, I'd certainly like to, and that's a threat. It's as close as you can get to a perfect RPG. But we're not going to talk about that today. Instead, I'd like to talk about its controversial younger brother, Chrono Cross. People love this game. People hate this game. It's probably one of the most polarizing titles in Square's PS1 catalog. I still remember starting Chrono Cross while recovering from my wisdom teeth surgery when I was 16, and wait a second. What's that? Oh God. It's the realization that I'm old! No! Look away! When I first played this 8 years ago, fresh off the high of Chrono Trigger and dental anesthetic, I loved it. Until I didn't. Look, I was that guy at the party. Every time someone even uttered the word Chrono, I'd step in and be like, yeah, Trigger's goated and Cross sucks, I hate that game. Yeah, I didn't get invited to many parties. You see, I found the beginning of the game great, but felt that a massive shift that happened after the first act ruined just about everything I loved. While I've spent the last 8 years being that guy, I can thankfully say I was never one of those guys. You know the ones. The ones mad it wasn't just Trigger 2. I must humbly request that Cross fans not listen to their arguments, dripping in a malodorous vat of bad faith. I just felt the game failed at being itself, and I spent years being extremely vocal about that sentiment. It wasn't until I opened up a Patreon and saw the overwhelming demand for me to revisit it that I realized, wait a second, I don't even like 16-year-old me. Why should I listen to anything he had to say? At that moment, I forged a capitalism-fueled pact to face my fears and give Chrono Cross another shot. And I'm glad I did. I was right to doubt 16-year-old me. This game is great, but it's also ungreat. It's complicated. Look, how much time do you got right now? How about roughly 2 parts of a YouTube series worth? This first video is dedicated to the general gameplay and opening hours, with the second one being a detailed analysis of the story. Oh, you're saying you do have the time and you'd love to hear me talk about it? Great. Then I guess you're cool enough to join me on my journey to come to terms with Chrono Cross. Let's open our minds, dust off our PS3s, and re-download the PS Classic version to take the plunge. You'll never take me alive! Chrono Cross begins like its predecessor, with a boy being awoken by his mother on a beautiful, sunny day. Just kidding! This is the late 90s, not the mid-90s. Completely different landscape. Now we've got fancy FMV technology, media res, epic pre-rendered backgrounds, innovative new combat mechanics, Australians!
Wow, bugger!
Dead Australian! Wait, what?
Oi, mate, stop your whinging.
Oh my god! Oh god. Another one of those dreams. I need to lay off the Tim Tams before bed. When comparing the two Chronopenings, you're immediately aware of just how different Cross presents itself right off the bat. Its usage of media res stands for a lot more than just hinting at events to come. It sets the tone of the game, a mystery full of intrigue, vagueness, striking imagery, and cats. The whimsy that defined Trigger was gone. Or was it? For a Chrono fan, the more traditional intro that follows is meant to be comforting, going as far to have the exact same opening line from Trigger. It lulls them into a relaxing sense of security, but the events that just transpired will be sure to stay fresh in their mind. This is Surge. He's a radical beach dude who has spent his entire life in Arnie, a quaint fishing village on the mainland of the El Nido archipelago. He lives with his mother Marge, his father Wazuki no longer being in the picture. Spending the time to talk to villagers can actually teach you quite a lot about him. Surge has had a hard life, dealing with past traumas like almost being killed by a panther and nearly drowning as a child. I'm sure not at the same time, of course, that'd be overkill, come on. As you learn about the world, tinker with the combat system, and go on a fetch quest for your childhood friend Lena, you'll notice something. This game is beautiful. While I wouldn't say it's the best looking PS1 game, that's Vagrant Story, Chrono Cross might have the strongest aesthetic on a system that produced the best aesthetics in gaming history. Pre-rendered backgrounds are amazing, and I will fight anyone who says otherwise shirtless on the Millennium Tower, and I will win. Whether you're roaming the gorgeous overworld, navigating through dense forests, exploring the main city of Termina, or just traversing a dungeon, Chrono Cross is always visually stunning. The places you visit overflow with diversity, yet always feel as parts of a cohesive world. They're distinct, with no two places ever looking the same. Okay, well maybe not exactly. Wink, wink. I can't wink. While Serge wraps up another ordinary day in paradise with Lena on the shore of Opasa Beach, discussing the nature of growing up, the passage of time, and how aging can change people, he starts to see flashbacks connecting to his previous experiences on this beach. And then, it happens. Chrono Trigger was about time travel, taking you on an adventure set throughout the world and across a multitude of eras. From the outset, Cross's ambitions were always more personal, so instead of traveling through time, the focus was shifted to traveling between dimensions. 2 of them. When Serge wakes up on what looks like the same beach, he realizes that he's all alone now. By traveling back to Arnie, he discovers something's off. Not only does no one know who he is, but they're saying the only Serge they know of is a young boy who drowned years ago. Yeah, that's right. Serge is stuck in a world where he died as a child. And if that wasn't enough, he also learned that his mom died shortly after his passing. Because of this, all of Serge's friends and acquaintances grew up differently, living entirely new lives. Can you imagine learning all of this, unsure if you'd ever be able to return home, trapped in a world that essentially grew up without you? That's fucked up, horrifyingly existential, literally the worst day anyone could have, and I love it. The game uses the opportunity to convey this feeling with the music as well. When you're in the home world, there's this really laid-back, tropical vibe to all the music that instantly endears you, only to rip it right away when you get stranded in the another world. That sentence might not sound grammatically correct, but it is. This is the home world, this is another world. It's fine, I'm fine, I know how to write scripts really good. Yasunori Matsuda's work on this game's soundtrack, besides a couple songs here and there, makes it stand out as one of the best RPG OSTs of all time. While standing over his own grave, Serge's deep introspective moment is broken up by a bunch of cartoon characters. Like, can you read the room? It turns out someone knew Serge would be here, and as the mysteries begin to stack up and danger draws near, a familiar face comes to his aid. This is when your adventure begins, and I'm willing to bet it's unlike any you've ever seen. And as we'll find out later, that's not entirely a compliment. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We need to get something out of the way first. I love this game now, but I'm gonna be mean to it where I see fit. I can't help it. It's out of love. What really impressed me, and I'm sure a ton of people back in 1999, is how open and replayable Chrono Cross is. From this very moment, several choices you make have serious consequences on how your game will play out. Eventually, your story will always come around to about the same conclusion, unless you're doing New Game Plus, but that's for another day in another timeline, which is to say I will not be talking about that, but the people you meet throughout your journey and the events you witness to get there won't be exactly the same. There are a total of 45 party members in Chrono Cross, and your decisions will dictate who will join you and who won't in your playthrough. That's right, gamers. You cannot recruit every character in one playthrough. While I respect its ambition in this aspect, we'll find out later that it tends to fumble this quite often. Meet Kid. No, not a child made of meat. This is Kid, a major character who quickly asks if you want to join her to find the mythical frozen flame. Now, for this playthrough, I wanted to experiment early on to see what would happen if I didn't follow the path clearly laid out for me. So I turned her down. I mean, hey, what's the worst that could happen? Oh, I guess I'm stuck with Lena and this.
Oh God, what is that? Get it away from me!
Kid, I am so sorry. Please take me back. I will do anything.
You want some Tim Tams? I got some Tim Tams!
Kid's importance to the plot makes it a very good idea to keep her around if you're trying to play this game the right way. But the fact that the game is extremely flexible offers a ton of replayability that you just don't see much in games of this era without a big Saga logo slapped on the front cover. Saga Frontier is really good and the remaster is really good and you should buy it. It's a really good game. Buy Saga Frontier Remastered. It's one of the best. 7 out of 10. Suffice it to say, from this moment on, I decided to never be mean to Kid. It wouldn't be fair to Chrono Cross or our little experiment if I picked choices that made it harder to engage with the story. And fortunately for us, Kid's a pretty solid party member. She can steal items from enemies and bosses, which can make dealing with the combat system in the first act way more manageable. Also, okay, maybe I just wanted to bench the dog. You look at that and tell me there's a god. Now, you're probably wondering, Cullen, with 45 party members, how does Cross manage to make them all feel fleshed out in terms of story and gameplay? Well, I can answer that easily. It doesn't. Your party members range from interesting to paper thin. If you're going into Cross expecting the same subtle depth the Trigger cast had, you're going to be disappointed. However, to say that this was a complete failure would be a gross exaggeration. A majority of the cast have very clear motivations, backstories, and arcs that are executed rather well. They tend to not get too much development, but what is there packs a punch. In cutscenes, they usually have slightly different takes on the same dialogue, with a whole dialect system programmed in it that's, yeah. But there are moments where keeping a character in your party during certain events can unlock unique dialogue that adds to their respective arcs. They all have personal reasons to join you in your quest to find the frozen flame, which tie together with the game's interconnecting themes. The son of a painter hiding his creative aimlessness behind a snarky, sarcastic attitude. An old man past his prime, living with the regret of his mistakes. A pirate forced to deal with the consequences of his life of inaction. 3 childhood friends who were torn apart by both the passage of time and the destinies that fate forced them to pursue. Taking time to go out of your way to help these characters with their problems requires some effort, but is absolutely worth doing if you want to get the most from the story. There's also a giant mushroom man. He ate a mushroom and became a mushroom man. He wants to not be a mushroom man. That's all you get. Chrono Cross and tonal inconsistency go hand in hand, and frankly, I am here for it. Sadly, the cast's unique and diverse backgrounds don't really reflect in the gameplay outside of their special moves and combat. See that segue? Was I proud of that? Not really. I guess we're gonna talk about the beating people up part. I'm not sure you've noticed yet, but Chrono Cross's desire to separate itself from its predecessor is going to be a running theme in these videos. And this applies to the battle system too. The snappiness, speed, and simplicity of that game is gone, but that doesn't make Cross's combat bad. If anything, I like it a lot. Sometimes. Enemies appear on the field, so there are still no random battles, but because of the ambition of the engine just barely being held together with duct tape and thumbtacks on the PS1, battles now take place in the good old combat dimension. I will forgive this most grievous of sins though, because they're gorgeous. Chrono Trigger respected the player's time with its battles, and despite drastically slowing down the pace, Cross manages to do that as well, but in a couple of unique ways. The need for grinding has been completely removed, and now you can run away from almost every single fight in the game. Have you ever played an RPG and found yourself completely immersed in the world and setting, and then had that immersion shattered by constant random battles that were almost impossible to run away from? Trust me, Xenogears battle theme left enough mental scars on me too, and while Chrono Cross's isn't on the same level, the battle theme does manage to flare up my anxiety in the same way. Stop! Anyway, your party doesn't level up in the traditional JRPG manner, instead only doing so after major boss battles. These star levels you gain apply to your whole squad, giving you the freedom to customize your active party however you see fit, since they all level up together. It also makes the game balanced, letting you always be at the right level. While this does help the casual fan a lot and removes the need for grinding, players who tend to enjoy breaking a game in half won't really be able to do so here without a bit of work. The first few random battles you engage in after bosses will give your active party members minor stat boosts, but are mainly used to obtain money and material to make gear. Overall, this system is way ahead of its time and has made Cross age better than many of its PS1 contemporaries. And a lot of modern RPGs too. You see this guy right here? When you get the chance, make him talk to his other self. He'll give you an item that lets you forge weapons and equipment almost anywhere. You don't have to go back to town anymore. There are games today that lack that level of quality of life. And I'm looking at you bravely too. It's a godsend. Although I will say, the combat mechanics themselves can feel needlessly complicated at times. Now, if I could draw your attention to the totally real, not made up PhD I keep on my wall. This, unfortunately, was not given to me for my ability to explain technical complexities of RPG mechanics. Luckily for you, there are some videos on YouTube that will probably do a better job explaining how all this works than I can, but I'm going to give it a swing anyway.
Okay, so there's like a stamina bar and hit percentages, element grid, element sphere, summon, element, use diminish to make the game more good, active time battle, but not really. Get the colors in the right order or you can't beat the final boss.
Okay, listen. What you need to know is that each character has a stamina bar that goes down with each attack. Each character has a light, medium, and heavy attack. The stronger the smack, the harder it is to initially land, with 3 different hit percentages that absolutely lie to you.
Please just land a hit, I'm begging.
But with every attack that connects, your hit percentages for all 3 increase. So the safe thing to do is to start with light attacks and work your way up until you can manage to land the big bonks. By the end though, I found myself playing riskier just to get the mandatory fights out of the way ASAP. If you play this yourself, remember that medium attacks are kind of your best friend in the late game if you want things to die fast. Oh yeah, attacks that land, and yeah, I know I'm saying the word attack a lot, but you should be able to understand why I might be a little limited in my vocabulary when referring to gameplay mechanics where you have to hit people with sticks. Also increase your combat level. That's right, the cold Crypt Keeper hand of gameplay systems isn't done with you yet. Your combat level decides which elements you can use. Chrono Cross, trying to be oh so complicated and cool in that late 90s way, decided it was too tubular for items or magic. And it was right. Traditional items have been completely erased from the formula, instead being replaced by elements. Elements are your abilities, combat items, and spells now under the same umbrella. You place these elements on an ever-growing grid that expands the more you increase your star level. When I played this 8 years ago, I found the system confusing and frustrating because without the right elements, battles can wreck you. But now, as a 24-year-old with complete control over his life who plays way too many video games at the same time, every 30 minutes, click that button. You are now ready for 99% of the battles in this game. Yeah, you could set them all manually if you'd like, but I think we need to cherish the conveniences we have in life when they pop up. Speaking of that, you can even remove all of the equipped elements from every party member at once, making it pretty easy to switch things around on a whim and then allocate elements for your new active party with ease. For most of the game, each element can only be used once in battle with the exception of consumables. While the removal of MP felt strange at first, Elements grew on me. Your items are somewhat comparable to a point-and-click game's inventory screen, requiring you to reach into Surge's impossibly big, cross-dimensional shorts pockets to show people items to progress in the story. Hey old lady, would you like to see the skull of your dead grandson?
Oh God, why have you done this?
I don't know! This was an interesting choice that makes Chrono Cross stand out. I love it. Look, I enjoy point-and-click adventure games a lot. I like RPGs. Combine them more, game industry, or I'll have to get my hands dirty and do it myself. This is another threat. Early on, the game can be pretty challenging, since your characters will have a small pool of elements and an incredibly tiny grid to put them on. But as Chrono Cross goes on, the difficulty becomes next to non-existent. Every party member has an element type they excel in, and each element type has a weakness. Look at this chart. This ain't your dad, Shin Megami Tensei. It's your little brothers. And no, I will not further elaborate that point. Call your brother, he misses you. Unless your brother sucks, then I'll be your brother, and I'm proud of you. Earlier, I alluded to the game not doing a great job at making your party members stand out in terms of gameplay, and I mostly stick by that. Everyone can use any element, but they each have unique special attacks equipped by default. You can also have specific party combinations to do dual and triple techs. Yeah, that's right. The coolest part of Chrono Trigger is back, and I was not able to record any footage to show you of this. They're incredibly difficult to unlock, and by the end of the game, when you'll have most of the party members to do them, you kill everything so fast you'll never be able to build up to using them. They're just not worth it. Look up a video on YouTube, that's what I did. Still, all the characters can easily spec into certain roles, such as all-rounders, damage dealers, speedsters, mages, and wastes of character slots. There's also an alien? And I shit you not, he is the most important character in the entire game.
He is responsible for saving the world, the true hero. All hail Starkey!
Anyway, here's the TLDR. Pick the characters you like, keep your party equipped with a large variety of elements, diminish, bonk with sticks until dead, rinse and repeat. There's also an element grid on the top left that you can used to do spells better and could summon a giant lizard. Oh, fuck. Oh no, I slept through the video footage. What's going on with Surgeon Kid? Oh God!
Make sure to ask your parents' permission before going to Neopets.com.
What did I miss?
This is Lynx. He's the main antagonist. He sucks. But let's rewind. Right after you meet back up with Kid and Termina, you hatch a plan to sneak into the elusive Viper Manor. I mentioned choices earlier, and this is one of the earliest moments where they can drastically affect the gameplay. I love this section. Without making it incredibly obvious, Chrono Cross gives you 3 choices that decide how you'll break into Viper Manor. There are 3 people in this city that can serve as your guide, and if this is your first time playing, you'll probably just go with the first person you find. The character you end up picking also locks you out of recruiting the other 2. I decided to go with Guile. He seemed cool. After having finished the game, I still don't really know what his deal is. He feels unfinished, but familiar. Why don't I get this feeling of deja vu? Wait a second. Is my nose bleeding? Holy shit, I need to fuck. He's really strong early on, and if you pick him, he'll basically carry you through Viper Manor.
I like your funny words, Magic Man.
But unfortunately, he begins to fall off later thanks to a pathetically small element grid. Anyway, we get a boat, frustratingly climb the manor's cliffside, and finally sneak in. You make your way through fighting. Was the art director okay? This is horrifying. Is this what your nightmares look like? Okay, look, so Kid is angry at Lynx for doing a big orphan murder and spitting on Trigger fans. In response, he stabs her with a plot-convenient poison. And before you all fall off a cliff, Lynx leaves you with the most cryptic shit ever.
Now come to me, Surge, the assassin of time, the Chrono Trigger.
No.
Despite being the second game in the Chrono series and the devs going out of their way to tell people this was not a sequel to Trigger, that's not really true. Like, at all. If you haven't played Trigger, you're going to be extremely lost, especially when the exposition gets real dumpy towards the end. Although, to be fair, you'll probably be lost no matter what. The second half of this game is an experience. I cannot wait for part 2. Some of the best content in the entire game is how it reflects back on and expands the science and lore introduced in Chrono Trigger, which in my opinion ultimately managed to hit way more than it missed. We'll be saving all that for next time, but I have to say, when I saw Link scream at this teenage beach bum that he was the best SNES RPG, I couldn't help but laugh. It makes sense in the long run, yeah, but oh god, this got me good. Okay, so I've been relatively positive on the game so far. Yeah, kinda made fun of it here and there, but you know, it's all in good fun. Amazing music, immaculate vibes, slightly overcomplicated yet still enjoyable and unique combat system. Chrono Cross is a pretty fun time, but we need to talk about the elephant corpse in the den. I mentioned before that how choice operated in the game was messy. So now we're going to talk about the game's biggest mess: how decision-making intersects with a juvenile usage of theming. Chrono Cross is a melting pot of ideas. Sometimes the flavors come together in a surprisingly tasty way, and other times they add too much to the pot, making the whole thing undercooked. From my analysis at the moment, there are two main themes of Chrono Cross that I was able to pick up on: identity and environmentalism. The former is handled with so much subtlety that it almost makes it come across kind of half-baked, while the latter is lacking basically any amount of nuance. Sometimes the latter works extremely well in the story, and sometimes there's some good overlap, but when the game focuses mainly on the former, that was always the most interesting stuff for me. Again, I love Chrono Cross despite and because of its flaws, but there is an arc in this game that I simply cannot defend in any capacity. So it's revealed that Kid's plot-convenient poison is life-threatening, and the only way to cure it would be to get the humor of a Hydra, which would have been found in the Hydra marshes. The catch is, they are extinct in this world. The clock's ticking. Not really though, because this is a story-driven JRPG. But at this point, you probably have the good idea that Hydras still exist in your home world. So you're left with a choice. Save the life of a girl who previously went out of the way to save yours when you were all alone in this dimension, or leave her to die and hang out with the boys.
Everyone, let's go! Oh yeah! How good are we?
Obviously, if you like Kid or just don't want to be responsible for her death, you're gonna save her. Let's do it. So, guess what? Almost every decision you make where you choose to be nice to Kid will result in locking you out of some of the best party members in the game. This is Glenn. Like his namesake, he is the coolest dude ever. Glenn is the only way you can unlock XCut. If you save Kid's life, you don't get Glenn. You don't get XCut. When I got here again, after all these years, with the knowledge of what lies behind the guilt-ridden second door of fate, I was stuck at an impasse. I wanted to give this game's story every possible chance to impress me. I knew the narrative significance of Kid, and hell, I even found her to be an enjoyable character. Now here's something about me you might not know. I am incredibly susceptible to being emotionally invested in games I play. Decision making sends me spiraling. I spent 2 hours resetting my Animal Crossing island before I was satisfied, just to drop the game a few weeks later and not touch it for an entire year. Just because I was worried that the animals would be mad at me. My mind goblins are that bad. Villainous role-playing in an RPG makes me feel actual pain. This is not me saying that I'm better than those who can do that. I am just incapable of living with the guilt I know the game will shower me with. So, for the purposes of our experiment, I said goodbye to XCut.
Little did I know, none of it fucking mattered, but we'll get to that.
It's at this point where we finally get the ability to travel between dimensions. Surge finally makes it back home, but now he has a goal and needs to accomplish it by any means necessary. All right, no time for distractions. We need to— oh, well, I don't want this fairy to be eaten alive. So yeah, we kill this thing, save Rasley, and invite her to our party. I'm sure glad I was looking around for optional content, but I do wonder who could have put this harmless creature in this pit. They'd have to be pure evil to do that. The dwarves live in this forest and worship the Hydra. This Hydra is the last one in the world. This would be an interesting moral dilemma if we didn't find this out now and you weren't already locked into your choice. But hey, let's see where they're going with this. Since this is a JRPG, you solve your problem with violence. You beat the dwarves, kill the Hydra to obtain the humor, and save Kid's life. However, because Rasley is in our party, we learn that the Hydra is actually having babies. So we didn't really drive the Hydras to extinction. Good job, you did it, yay! Okay, so I kind of like this. In a way, the game is making commentary about the tendency of players going with the flow and doing reprehensible things because they're told to. Tackling topics like this in 1999 was genuinely ambitious. While it's a shame it cheaps out, the only way you learn there's a hopeful ending is if you went out of your way to save Rasley. I'm sure they'll keep up the good effort and continue to handle these kind of themes with all the grace of a—
This is the part of the video where I cut to the live action segment where I stare directly at the camera to signify that I know how they fucked it up.
So now we have Kid back. You're given a vague goal. Go to Fort Draconia. You have to figure out how to get there by exploring both worlds. It's a bit directionless, but this part of the game is amazing. Since you have a boat now, it drastically opens up where you can go in the another world. And yes, grammar, I know, whatever, let's keep going. You get a chance to treat yourself to the amazing boat music, explore the various islands, check out an abandoned Viper Manor during the day, discover the dwarves decided to invade Water Dragon Isle to kill all the fairies and take their home for themselves, have a super wacky pirate ghost adventure— wait, what? What the fuck? So let me get this straight. The dwarves got mad that humans killed the Hydra, so they decide to murder all the fairies and steal their home? Oh yeah, this makes total sense! Look, the idea of victims of a travesty caused by selfish violence could lash out against an uninvolved third party? Yeah, okay, that's interesting and makes you step back and question your actions. Cycle of violence, am I right? Not necessarily a bad story trope despite what many would tell you, since execution is what always matters, but they have a fucking tank! The dwarves, almost accidentally, are made out to be comically evil, yet the writing keeps framing it as primarily the humans' fault. Which, that's fine. We personally had a big part in their actions. Except not always, because the story needs you to be here to get the ice breath and to get to Fort Draconia. If we hadn't killed the Hydra, someone else apparently does. And Kid just kinda shows up at some points like, hey, what's up, I'm fine, huh? In my opinion, this really takes away from a lot of what did work with this scene in theory. Also, were the humans responsible for that innocent fairy you tried to have eaten alive for the fun of it? You absolute pieces of shit!
Oh, I feel like I got an aneurysm. Anyway, I digress.
You beat them, and since Rasley was on our party, she just goes, oh yeah, I forgot to mention the Hydras aren't extinct at all.
Oh, we're sorry about all that then. Oh, that's a pickle, isn't it? Y'all have a good day then.
Bye.
How could the humans do this to us?
You're supposed to feel bad for the dwarves, and earlier, yeah, I could totally see that. But their militaristic nature makes that borderline impossible. There are ways this could have worked. And like I said, the idea of putting an environmentalist spin on typical RPG shit where you're constantly running around and killing creatures because video games? That's cool. I enjoy media that criticizes humanity's destructive tendencies. Yes, I think Nier is my favorite game. Why do you ask? Thankfully, this is the worst of it. There are moments where Cross's message about needing to appreciate nature before it's too late and understanding our role in ruining the planet work. But this particular instance, it doesn't at all.
We dwarves love the environment. Hey, make sure you go out and bid on our He-Ho Tank NFT. The proceeds will go towards rebuilding the marshes.
Oh. You ever realize you hit your comedic peak and that it's all downhill from here? This is laughable. It comes incredibly close to saying something, but just doesn't. Yes, cycle of violence, bad. Do you have anything else to add? Oh no, put the golf club down. I promise, I still like this game. Ah! I want you to imagine the warmth of a campfire. The flames' faint glow illuminating a tiny clearing from the invasive darkness of the night sky. Two unlikely allies decompress after one of the worst days someone could experience, mentally preparing themselves to face their fiercest adversary tomorrow. Everything has been building up to this. They take a moment to reflect on the events that brought them together. One of them decides to lower the walls she's kept up most of her life. Kit explains that she came from an orphanage. The orphans didn't have much but each other until Lynx burned it all down, ruining her life. There is no voice acting in Chrono Cross, but you can practically hear the bitterness in Kit's voice. As she was forced back into a life of solitude, she was able to escape thanks to the love of a stranger. She has suffered so much to simply survive. She expresses her distaste with humanity, and knowing what she's gone through, you can understand why she feels this way. Her erratic actions and behavior make sense now. In her mind, vengeance is the only thing left to keep her going. All she really cares about is killing Lynx. Despite this moment being a grim one, Surge realizes something. This girl who seems to trust no one has proven that she considers him a friend without ever explicitly saying it. This moment is powerful, dark, human, and ultimately beautiful. Until you realize you can miss this whole event and never learn of kids' motivations. I got the scene when I first played, but it was absent on this playthrough, and I genuinely don't know why. I've looked all over the internet, but no one can give me a straight answer on why the game is designed like this. This should be mandatory, easily could be with a few tweaks, and ultimately hurts the story with its potential exclusion. Why, you ask? Guess you'll have to wait for part 2, because it's not gonna come back until around the end. I originally thought this would be unlocked by making the effort to save Kit's life. After everything you've been through with her, everything you've sacrificed and forced others to give up for her sake, you'd have this moment of reflection. But nope, the most I was able to figure out was that saving Rasley or denying Kid the first time probably had something to do with this scene not being here, but I literally have no idea. If it wasn't obvious, this was not my footage. YouTuber Kbash had some left over from his amazing video on both Chrono games, and let me use it. But to add insult to injury, in his playthrough, he got X-cut. So I honestly don't know why the game felt the need to waggle its Crypt Keeper fingers in my face once again. Let me engage with your story, Cross. I'm begging you here. At this point, you're thinking, Cross feels very different from Trigger. Edgier, more polygonal. The tone of the writing is, well, different. Okay, what do you want from me? Let me write my scripts with my uncreative adjectives in peace. Look, I've been avoiding comparing the two Chrono games' quality because that just wouldn't be fair. In terms of pacing and game design, Trigger is perfect in a way that I didn't find until I played a little indie darling named Dragon Quest XI. Hey, wait a second. I wonder if there's a connection.
Psst, you want me to let you in on a little secret? Come here. It's because Chrono Trigger's just a Dragon Quest game.
Yuji Horii, creator of the Dragon Quest series, wrote the majority of the scenario on Chrono Trigger with the help of Masato Kato. 4 years later, Kato reappeared in the Squaresoft parking lot, naked and holding nothing but a finished production disc called Chrono Cross. Horii had nothing to do with this game, and it shows. Toriyama's art wasn't carried over. Cross is completely Kato's baby, and in a way, I respect that. The whole game feels like it's always trying to fight for the right to exist outside its predecessor's shadow. And that's commendable, but his theming can be lacking at times and his directing leaves a bit to be desired. I'm sure development was utter hell, so it's not all his fault, but I'm not even sure more money in the purse and a longer dev time could have fixed the deep inherent flaws of Chrono Cross. But at the same time, I kind of believe those flaws add something to it. I used to think of Kato as a hack, but it's impossible to believe that anymore. For all the issues, when this game hits, oh man, it hits. Okay, I know how weird it sounds for me to say that when it seems like I've been giving this game a lot of shit so far, and that's because this first act, which I fondly remember loving years ago, just wasn't doing it for me anymore. Without bringing up spoilers, the events of Fort Dragonia signify the end of the first act and the beginning of the second. Chrono Cross becomes a completely different game after this. Vaguely remembering what was coming, all I could do during the beginning of this new playthrough was brace myself and pay attention to details I missed the first time. While its stunning aesthetic blew me away, I didn't feel like a lot of the introduction stuff worked after you met Kid. Not a lot happens in those first 10 or so hours, and the story that's there was too unfocused and vague, or downright bad, for me to get attached to the characters. There are moments of brilliance, but they're sparse. At this point, I started to wonder, if I didn't like the first act anymore and I was convinced I didn't like anything after, was this game bad, plain and simple? Well, no. As I've grown up, my tastes have changed, but that isn't inherently a bad thing. Years of maturity have given me a new perspective. Adulthood has made me approach fiction I previously experienced in a new light. So, as I entered Fort Dragonia again after all these years, and I thought I knew what to expect and was under the impression that I had all the answers, I was in for a rude awakening. This is where Cross really starts. The game I had neglected for most of my adult life, because I just didn't get it. The game I was slowly but surely coming to terms with. And trust me, it's about to get hairy.
You did it. You ended the video in the worst possible way. I'm so proud of you, me.
Coming to terms with. And trust me, it's about to get hairy.
He's not wrong. What an awful way to end a video. And what's up with the hair? Get it cut, you bum. Solid video all around, though. I hope he can top it. Oh, wait. I'm he. Well, looks like we've got our work cut out for us, my radical dreamers. Let's jump into it. Oh, yeah, I think my monitor's messed up. If anyone knows how to turn off the nostalgia preset, please let me know. It's been like this for days. Chrono Cross, otherwise known as Squaresoft's entire PS1 catalog tossed into a blender.
Oh God!
The Chrono Cross landscape has changed far more than I expected in the last year, in the scope of this little experiment with it. During the February 2022 Nintendo Direct, Square Enix announced Chrono Cross was getting a remaster, which wasn't out when I wrote this, but is out now that I've started recording this. Because you know me and scheduling, it features optionally upgraded visuals, cleaned up music, battle modifiers, and it's all bundled with an officially localized Radical Dreamers. You know, the Satellaview Chrono Trigger visual novel sequel that directly inspired Cross and never got an official Western release? Yeah, that one. Thanks for ruining my joke, guys! Not to mention, there was a huge tie-in with the mobile game Another Eden with voice acting for the main cast.
Cause I'm the only one that can.
Serge, my boy, you sound so good. Just so we're clear, I manifested all of this, by the way. Yeah, you heard me. I localized Radical Dreamers. You're welcome. I hereby deem this the year of Chrono Cross, and I guess that makes this two-parter turn into a three-parter. Make sure you come back next time when I talk about the remaster and Radical Dreamers. Not the mobile game, though. Well, maybe the mobile game. I don't know if people really care, but as of now, probably not. Yell at me on Patreon or something, I don't know. Now, if you didn't watch the first video, we covered how Chrono Cross fared as a game up until the end of Act 1. I also discussed enough of the story to give people an idea of what was going on before things got weird. I'm going to proceed assuming you've watched that, because we're going deep into spoilers. This will cover what happens from the beginning of Act 2 up until the end. Alright then, you've been warned. Now, before we really get started, my editor has instructed me that I should probably address some of the inaccuracies in the first part. You know, for optics and integrity and whatnot. So please take a minute to read the following. Okay, asshole, real funny, I get it. Let's just get into the video. We left off with Surge and Kid entering Fort Dragonia. You know, I'm happy I got the gameplay discussion out of the way before and I can focus on the story this time. Now I have absolutely no obligation to explain what it was like to trudge through bad dungeons. Xenogears, I am not. Hello Xenogears fans, and welcome to my channel. I can't feel sensation anymore unless I take potshots at beloved RPG series. It's not you, it's me. If you'd like to file a complaint, get in line behind the trails, fans. Anyway, cool nightmare fuel bosses aside, Fort Dragonia is a mid-dungeon that goes on too long. Also, not to get all cross-armed video game YouTube reviewer nitpicking rant-sona, but you're telling me that Link just deactivated all the dragons and then ran through the door to the elevator before it closed? Did he and the general practice this or something?
Alright, man, we gotta do practice runs, so this'll be real cool looking when they show up at the tower.
So cool.
Okay, so on the count of 3, you hit the button and I'm gonna dash in really fast and slide under before it closes.
Okay, so like on 3 or 1, 2, 3, go.
No! We're not doing this bit. You know when to press the fucking button.
Alright, man, fine. Jeez. Just trying to lighten the mood.
Okay, 1, 2,
Oh shit.
3!
Oh man, you good?
Now, this isn't the first time you've seen this place, and it won't be the last either. We're talking 4 times max. Where are my fellow dumb brains at? Huh? Just me? Yeah, that's fair. Oh, when that media res ketchup hits so good! Finally, you face off with the Bozo duo in the Dragon Room, and make pretty quick work of them both. But then... Oh my god, I cannot believe that General Nefarious could possibly be capable of backstabbery, Viper. Real head scratcher there, my guy. Lynx turns out to be Surge's trauma panther of old, and then hits us with a good old libertarian nonsense. Dude, oh my god, what have you done?
Well, you see, Surge, racism goes 2 ways.
What?
And really, with this government, licenses for driving cars, what's next? Licenses for our damn toasters?
No, really, what the fuck are you talking about? It turns out this was Lynx's plan all along, switching bodies. Link Surge stabs Kid while Surge Lynx watches, and in hindsight, this doesn't make much sense. But it's cool, so we'll give it a pass. We take those. And hey kid, general rule of thumb, when the previously silent protagonist suddenly changes his portrait and starts talking about how he's a proponent for small government, red flag girl, run! Link Surge mentions how he now has the Key of Fate, tells Surge Lynx to come to the Sea of Eden, and then yeets him off to the paint dimension. Ooh, let's catch our breath. I know your brain is reeling from my impressive 10 jokes a minute pacing, so apologies in advance for the upcoming tonal whiplash. We just need to take time to smell the roses. This is the Temporal Vortex, a world governed by chance and chaos. No, not like that. This serves as Surge's lowest point in the game. But it's also a chance for him to take a breather and collect his thoughts. The vortex's only resident is an old woman named Sprig, who couldn't help but develop a sense of nihilism due to her situation. In a world of uncertainty, where true happiness is fleeting, life seems devoid of meaning. But isn't that not too far off from reality? We ourselves live in a world that quite often seems to lack any and all order, but that doesn't mean there's no beauty to be found in it. It's all around us. We just might not appreciate it in the moment. Harl, oh yeah, she's a clown lady you met who likes to hang around Lynx, puts Surge's sense of identity and resolve to the test. Are you really Surge? Are you the person on the inside or the outside? During this test, he struggles through an almost endless maze of uncertainty. His old friends are now out of reach, paying him no mind. Where a lesser person would have probably given up, Surge overcomes, proving himself to Harl and showing self-worth and understanding of who he is. And it is only when he's able to do that he is allowed to play Echochrome. Yeah, I'm sure like 3 people got that reference, so totally worth ruining the emotional payoff for everyone else. Afterwards, the party escapes the temporal vortex and winds up in the Hydra Marshes, in the homeworld no less. Except something is off now. That tropical overworld music just doesn't hit the same anymore. It feels wrong. Surge revisits his old home, expecting solace, but that's not what he finds. Boom! Turns out your friends and family were secret bigots. Yep, all of them hate demi-humans. Even Lena's a racist. You know, that one's not really too surprising though, I kinda always had a feeling. Trying to explain the situation to them gets him nowhere. They just don't believe him. The prejudice runs really deep. People are screaming at him, telling him to not eat their pets. The most vile shit. Interestingly, for those thorough with NPC dialogue sweeps at the beginning of the game, you'll find that this was actually pretty well set up, with a couple of his neighbors negatively referring to outsiders. If you weren't, this is probably a pretty big surprise. However, this being easy to miss and easy to dismiss on first glance is very intentional, and upon reflection, a brilliant story beat. If you recall, for basically the entire first act of the game, your exploration is limited almost exclusively to the Another World. When you do manage to come back to the homeworld for a second, you're limited to where you started and Water Dragon Isle, which you can't even freely sail to. You're quite literally restricted from expanding your worldview. In this moment, he has to accept the fact that he essentially lived a life of privilege in a society full of bigotry. There are 2 readings here. 1, Surge has never realized how prejudiced the villagers he knew and loved actually were, or 2, he was naturally complicit in that prejudice. Regardless of how you interpret this scene though, it leads to one conclusion. Surge is now forced to experience life from a new perspective, and his ability to actually explore his own world is tied to his own personal development and discovery. He gets to experience what it's like firsthand to be a part of a group his own society discriminates against, and is now specifically in the body of the demi-human people hate the most. Knowing how bad this world, his world, truly is, and how things are even a little bit better in the world where he doesn't survive, how can you not internalize those feelings? For the entire game up till now, he's only wanted to return home, return to his regular life. But is that home even worth coming back to? Is that old life even worth living anymore? Escape isn't an option. Surge can't travel between dimensions without his original body. He's an unwanted piece of a puzzle far grander than anything he could possibly imagine. However, there is one person who will listen to and comfort Surge: his mom. Surge tells her what happened about Lynx, the Sea of Eden, everything. She mentions how Surge's father Wazuki and Lena's father Miguel were lost there 14 years ago during a storm.
Miguel never came back at all, and Wazuki was never the same until disappearing one. With the exposition, Radius busted through! Obligatory boss battle. You kick his ass, he realizes you're Surge, and then joins the squad to figure out what happened to General Viper and Riddell in this world. Come on, Life Alert and Clussy, we got a mystery to solve. Clussy 2, where are you? We got some work to do now. There are some neat differences in the worlds that you were never able to see in Act 1. Termina goes from a peaceful port town in the other world to being completely occupied by the Poré military in the homeworld. While the citizens hate you for the most part, your furry new appearance does allow you to travel to places a teenager never could thanks to Lynx's status as a general. One of those places is Viper Manor. Well, more like the ruins of it, as it's been completely destroyed in this reality. You're here to talk to Norris, a commander of the Poré military, who fills you in on what happened. Lynx appeared in this world 3 years ago, and with his plans of aggressive military expansion, invaded the archipelago to find the Frozen Flame. Norris wants to join you to figure out what happened. So he gives you a boat, with your main goal now being to go to the Dead Sea. Sorry Radius, have fun warming the bench. My guy Norris is here to take your place. Reason? Gun! And the game is open once again. No one is telling you how to accomplish your goals now. It's up to you to discover the world for yourself. You can visit areas to see how they differ in the homeworld, find new treasure chests, and speak to NPCs. Explore, recruit new party members, gamble, discover a... There is a lot to do here before going to the Dead Sea, and more or less being a few hours away from getting your body back. So I implore you, take your time. If I got into every single detail on why you should, we'd be here all day, but there's a lot of depth given to side characters, some cool quests, and some fun fights. All this right here, this was the first moment I truly started to fall in love with this game. Surge no longer has his old allies or the sympathies of the world. He has to start over from less than nothing. So many RPGs attempt to tell variations of the hero's journey. You start with a young character, unsure of where they stand in life, and set off to see the world, using the act of growing up as a gameplay feature of sorts. At least, in theory. From all of the Square games of this era, none pull off that connection between gameplay and story as well as Chrono Cross. At least out of all the ones I've played. If you have any others, let me know. Hell, few RPGs, period, pull off these occasional bursts of open-ended progression as well as it does. Probably because of the puzzle adventure game influence I mentioned last time. I wonder if Kato played Myst. I wonder what he thinks of the Selenita gauge. I bet he probably liked it. Yeah, I bet it was his favorite. If you weren't exploring in the earlier bits, this act might leave you frustrated. While it wasn't the reason I didn't like the shift to Act 2 when I was younger, it certainly contributed. Nevertheless, I will once again use my soapbox to preach that you should never listen to the opinions of your younger self. The ability to question outdated perspectives is something all adults need to foster in order to lead balanced, healthy lives. Chrono Cross conveys this with story and gameplay in a goddamn 90s RPG. Previous foes are now allies, and old allies are now foes. Or just disinterested. All I'm saying is I bet Glenn would have pulled up. Oh, fuck off, Guile. L plus ratio, plus you aren't Pierre, plus your interesting character traits are removed from the game, plus your element grid fell off. So Lynx, how about next time you skip the contrived moral dilemma and just aim a bit better, huh? I've got a big meeting with the boys on playthrough 3 that I don't want to miss. Huh? Chop chop. The game is saying, go out and explore the world you were born into and see it for what it really is. All the evil, all the beauty. Surge is looking for himself. And that's not something you can find unless you know where you came from. After all is said and done, you can finally enter the Dead Sea, one of my favorite areas in the game. Strap in everybody, because we're about to get into the batshit Kino zone, only occasionally veering off and crashing into the we ran out of money gas station.
The water here is frozen in time, allowing you to quite literally walk on the ocean. Oddly enough, this part of the world is futuristic, and the music is slowly building intrigue as you explore. I don't know, am I alone in thinking that this is one of the best JRPG tropes? Oh, look at me, I'm in my cozy fantasy setting, time to lower my guard. What the fuck is that? Kato and his team deserve all the credit in the world for coming up with the Dead Sea. Their brains are so huge. God, you know, I'm a bit envious of people who played Cross before Trigger. They probably got hit with such a stronger mindfuck here, as tripping and falling into apocalyptic futures happens in like hour 3 of that game. At least they threw Trigger fans some fan service bones. I'm gonna get eviscerated if I don't mention the Lavos scene you can find, but I actually forgot to do that on this playthrough. And I didn't want to go back for footage, so I don't know, I'm just gonna find a picture online. Look! Lavos!
I clapped because I know.
Chrono Trigger.
I know what that is!
Your party eventually reaches the Tower of Geddon at the center of the Dead Sea. Ground zero of the Galactic Time Shards, and a shopping mall dungeon. Are you kneeling yet? Go on. I'll wait. God, the atmosphere in this area is so good! I didn't give this segment nearly enough credit when I was younger. The ambience, music, and pre-rendered backgrounds tell such a cool story. As you make your way through this area, Surge starts to see the ghosts of 3 mysterious children. Or at least what the game tells me are children. They look more like anthropomorphic pixel blobs. You'll also find out what happened to the Acacia dragons of this world. You remember them, right? The cool, classic, them. They died, or something. Oh God, that's so sad. Anyway, don't mind me, I'm just gonna walk over here and unlock easy mode real quick. As you continue through the Tower of Geddon, the 3 ghost children seem to be guiding you somewhere. If it's not obvious by now, this is Luca, Marl, and Chrono. You know, those classic characters from Xenogears. Look, it's Luca Xenogears! Big fan. The place you arrive at is none other than Lean Square, and it's here when those who haven't played Trigger will probably be somewhat lost. Or at the very least, fail to understand the weight of what this scene represents. As you finish Chrono Trigger, one of the last scenes before the credits is the establishment of Nadia's bell. It's the symbol of the hard work you put in defeating Lavos, a promise of a better future, a representation of returning players' feelings towards one of the greatest games ever made. And it's in shambles. Love or hate this moment, and trust me, I know a lot of people hate it, this is undeniably a bold direction to take the story. Surge is berated by the protagonists of Chrono Trigger. They tell him that he's responsible for all of their hard work being for nothing. Surge, justifiably, has no idea what they're talking about. He hasn't done anything. Yet, time and time again, people around him keep accusing him of making the world a worse place, simply for existing. A line that really stuck out to me is, "So many lives were supposed to be saved. This planet was to be healed with love, hope, and dreams." There are fans who hate this scene. I'd know better than most because I was one of them. You're telling me that all the time I spent in Trigger amounted to nothing? That all of that effort was wasted? 0 out of 10, Chrono Cross. You ruined the sanctity of Thing I Like. Now I'll never be able to look at Thing I Like the same ever again. And I refuse to budge on this stance. That's it, we're done. Hey guys, thanks for making it to the end of the video. As always, huge shout out to my Reddit community, r/sweaty gamer boys against Tatsuya Nomura. We're currently 1 million members strong. Make sure to like and subscribe, and join me next week for part 84 in my planned 200-part video essay series on why Final Fantasy VII Remake killed my dad. Here's a bitter pill to swallow.
A future of peace was never possible in Chrono Trigger's world. I think the ending for that game is perfect for the game they made. A fun, epic shonen SNES RPG. And yeah, I know not every SNES RPG had a happy ending, but you have to admit, within the scope of Chrono Trigger, the ending just fits. Chrono's basically just Goku with a sword. Of course he gets to run off into the sunset and become king. But as for the state of the world, you're kidding yourself if you didn't think there were no repercussions for the Trigger crews meddling with time. And evil didn't just die with Lavos, that's an unrealistic expectation. And if you think about it, in every story ever told, that world established continues to live on long after we close the book on it. Happy endings serve to offer us closure, allowing us to wipe our hands clean of the world we invested a part of ourselves in for a time and move on with life. But in a manner of speaking, that world will still live on, even if we're no longer there to witness it. And not to be cynical, but frankly, eternal peace is a myth in any reality. Positive change isn't just something gained once, it's something people have to work towards constantly. I believe that Kato and his team, when trying to figure out where to take the Chrono series next, had an understanding of this. We all finished Chrono Trigger and put the controller down thinking that love, hope, and dreams would be enough to keep the future safe. But it wasn't. And Lean Square, once a symbol of human perseverance, is now stuck frozen in time as a proof of humanity's failures. Fuck, this game is so cool. Miguel, who was probably waiting behind that pillar for decades, decides to reveal himself and finally explain what's going on. On that stormy night all those years ago, Serge, Wazuki, and Miguel ended up in Chronopolis. Look, I know, we'll get there. Hang on. The doomed future of Lavos that was eliminated by the Trigger Kids, and the happy future they fought for that was eliminated by Serge splitting the timeline, were both condensed into the Dead Sea. By fate? I won't lie, this gets a bit all over the place, but I fuck with it. Miguel asks Serge to join him in an endless nothing, where he doesn't have to struggle against life's hardships anymore. Unable to reason with him, you fight. There's no other options. No battle music interrupts this somber moment. It's a powerful scene.
Why are you running?
You know, I remember Miguel being extremely hard on my first playthrough. Dude straight up put the whole thing on pause for like a month. But, guess I never used auto-allocate because I kicked his ass. Please stop praying for my furry dad, he's too powerful. After the dust settles, Chrono tells you, yes, he talks now, that the vengeance of the future they killed is about to begin. Fate decides to destroy the entire Dead Sea to avoid the frozen flame being awoken by Serge, the Chrono Trigger, the only person who can awaken it. Okay, again, I love this game, don't get me wrong, but man, if this isn't one of those dictionary RPGs, you know what I mean, right? So many terms, it's easy to lose track of what's happening. You would not believe how many Wikipedia tabs I had to have open while writing this. And am I alone in frequently forgetting what the hell the frozen flame even is and does? Anyway, sometimes you just have to go with the flow, you know? Chrono Cross is definitely at points one of those let it ride kind of games. Anywho, you have your next goal. You can only access the Sea of Eden when all of the dragon gods, spread across both dimensions, are fought. And hey, now you can finally return to the Another World. Thanks, Miguel. Get better soon.
Lena,
Also, it looks like they didn't have enough money to animate a unique FMV for links crossing dimensions like Serge does, so he just kind of clips through the ground and ends up on the other side. We've now returned to the fuck around and explore part of the game. Everyone's favorite. There's new characters to recruit, like Karsh, the jobber extraordinaire, and a whole new dungeon that we can... Actually, you know what? No. If I explained this in detail, the video would take 5 more months, and I'd never hear the end of it.
Surge, get in the chair.
So like, we did a stupid dungeon to fight a gross bug and a racially insensitive demon chef to save Riddell. Then we fought a cyborg. Then we fought a Gundam. And then we fought a Gundam again. And then the cyborg hit the Gundam with a chandelier. And then he joined us. Then we returned to the Friendship Shack, only for Lurge and Kid to show up. They were about to kill us, but thankfully Fargo, he's okay now, arrived to save us with a chubby pterodactyl friend. And Lurge was like, no way! And Kid was like, bugger, no way! And Fargo was like, yes way! Viper was also okay, flesh wound, and joined us. Marcy was okay, and joined us. Zoe was okay, and he joined us too. Harl had some not so great vibes, so we kind of let her stay on the ship and work it out. Hold on, is that a fucking alien? So then we like played some musical chairs at a concert, summoned some fish people to kill, and then we returned to Fort Dragonia to get a cool baby little dragon. Oh wait, I think I got off topic. Anyway, so there are these 6 dragons we had to kill.
Okay, no, enough. I'm fast forwarding this. So like, definitely take time to get Surge's best weapon, the Masamune. The entire arc with that is A+ content, but fuck, I'm exhausted. Also, Orla's pretty good too, so I guess do her stuff as well. Oh, look, it's Lurge at Fort Dragonia. Kick his ass.
Damn it, Surge, nobody knows how freedom works.
What are you talking about?
Look, the proposition is simple. The government is inefficient, so we uproot the government and put healthcare on church donations.
Dude, that's honestly not even worth questioning because I know as soon as I do, you're just gonna...
Fuck you, got mine!
Yep, there you go.
All right, now sit that ass back down and learn yourself some evolution in the Dragon Room. At the dawn of time, there was the amoeba, which one day evolved into ape. One day that ape evolved into man. Alongside that man lived the dragon, which evolved from Chrono Trigger Dinosaur. You ever just use a dragon tear to grow a baby and then you become that baby and then the baby grows up really fast into a naked adult Surge and then you're just naked? Congratulations! You're a big boy now. Surge has now regained his identity while growing as a person, while also growing a person who became his new identity. Confused yet? Oh, my sweet summer child. We haven't even gotten to Crazy Town yet. He's finally found a cause to fight for, and his old friends will now join him again. But fuck those bozos. Y'all think you're just gonna be allowed back in the crew like that? But we all know they're not the crew anymore. All right, everyone. We have now come to the end of Act 2. It was a lot. But hey, hopefully Act 3 will give us a breather, huh? Why do I have a feeling we're gonna need this? Last time, I mentioned how I didn't care for the whole Surge Link switch when I was a kid. And I think now's as good a time as any to get into why that was. I spent a year trying to articulate this into words, and it hasn't been easy. If the previous mention of privilege bugged you, prepare to start fuming, preferably after you click out of the video. Bye now, thanks for the view. Now, I'm not sure if you've noticed this yet, but I'm a white guy. Yeah, maybe you see where I'm going with this. When I first played Cross, I was a middle-class, cis, seemingly straight white teen. Surge was practically wish fulfillment. He looked enough like me, lived in a beach paradise, and got to go on a fun adventure with a cute girl and some cool friends. To take all of that away and replace the player character with someone I couldn't relate to infuriated me. While I empathize with Surge's urge to get his body back, the critical thinking part of my brain pretty much shut off for everything else. You play as Lynx for a really long time, and I just wanted to rush through to get back to the part where I could play as someone that looked like me again.
I didn't understand Surge's struggles, the feeling like the world hated him just for existing, and I didn't care to. I wasn't listening, and I shut out a game smart enough to understand a generation of kids who felt ostracized just for being themselves, all because I was no longer being directly appealed to. Make no mistake, I don't think Chrono Cross is some revolutionary, radicalized RPG with the answer to discrimination. But there's something here. Underneath all the issues, there's good intention, thematic ambition that Chrono Trigger never even tried to achieve. And I'll be honest, I don't know how much more I really have to say, and I'd like to not overindulge myself in white guilt. I'm certain that there are many minority voices out there who also love this game, so I implore you to seek them out. I can only speak for myself and acknowledge that there was a time when I refused to listen or empathize. And obviously, I regret that part of my life. That doesn't make me special in any way, it just means I grew up. I'm glad I gave this game another shot because I keep finding more and more to appreciate with each passing day. But back to that later. We got a game to beat. Surge enters the Sea of Eden, another world's version of the Dead Sea. A change in the state of the world so powerful, it instigated a disk change and fucked up all my footage for the foreseeable future. As I alluded to earlier, the best games have a segment where it has the balls to break up the cool fantasy setting with an unexpected super futuristic area. Chrono Cross hits you with 2. Chronopolis is so cool. It's even better than the Dead Sea. And if you're wondering why I skimmed past the previous side content, it's because from here on, the story gets dense. For comparison, on the Wikia page's plot synopsis, everything that happened before now fits into paragraph 1 of 4. As you make your way through Chronopolis, there are these text dumps you can find on optional computer terminals. And it's a lot. What the hell? Oh wait, that must be the seatbelt alarm, because the ride begins now. Strap in. Yeah, I'm gonna need my laptop for this one. It's dense. So the fate mentioned by characters throughout the Cross story is actually a supercomputer made by Balthasar Chrono Trigger and Robo Chrono Trigger in the future city of Chronopolis. The researchers did a series of experiments on the Frozen Flame. For reasons we'll get to that. This created the previously mentioned galactic time shard that knocked Chronopolis into the Sea of Eden of 12,000 BC, which in turn changed history forever by creating the reptiles/dinosaurs of Dinopolis. Wikipedia calls this shifting. Anywho, that eventually created the dragons, and then there was a war, and Fate won, and then that split the dragon god, yes there is a dragon god, into 6 elemental dragons. Fate began terraforming the area around the Sea of Eden into El Nido to make a civilization, because what else are you supposed to do after winning a giant war, I guess? This also explains why El Nido never existed during the time of Chrono Trigger, because it exists as a consequence to a future in which Lavos never destroyed the world. Fate then had the workers of Chronopolis' memories erased because they didn't unionize in time, and then had them populate the archipelago, deciding to control them with the records of Fate, aka your save points, making it so they couldn't change history or leave El Nido. These devices forced the residents of El Nido into following a specific path, literally ensuring its continued survival by robbing humanity of its free will so no one can change the future and erase its existence. You know, like the concept of fate. Predeterminism, all that stuff.
Well, it doesn't make sense yet, but I'm sure it will soon.
Following the founding of El Nido, ghosts, but not the kind of ghosts like the Trigger Kids, ran Chronopolis while society thrived for the next 1,000 years. Also, apparently it got colonized at some point, that's important. Now, remember when Surge was attacked by the Panther Demon as a child? That caused Wazuki and his best bro Miguel to travel the sea to find help for him. How you can find help for your dying son in an ocean part of Balthazar's plan? I don't want to question that. I don't know. This is what led Surge to Chronopolis and making contact with the Frozen Flame. It is fucking hot in here. Let me know in the comments if you like the jacket. I think it's my favorite piece of clothing I own. This was actually a part of the plan between Balthazar and Lucas Xenogears to place a failsafe on the mother brain of Fate, which is Robo Chrono Trigger. Oh fuck, there goes Robo Chrono Trigger. I guess he's dead. Moving on. The failsafe locked the door so no one but Surge could enter it, cutting off Fate's power source, creating a domino effect that split the dimensions into two, all because Fate tried to gaslight gatekeep girl boss Wazuki into drowning Surge. Also, there's an optional terminal in Chronopolis that implies Radical Dreamers is a weird fringe third dimension. Very cool. In the dimension where Surge lives, Fate can't exist anymore. That means Chronopolis can't exist either, which explains why the Sea of Eden is the Dead Sea in that universe, because the future that Lavos tried to make ends up happening and is no longer reverted. Despite that being the case, Chronopolis somehow manages to observe both different realities. Lynx, who is the physical manifestation of the physical manifestation of Fate, and also your dad as exposited by Chrono Trigger on the exposition beach at the very end of the game when they ran out of money and had to tech stomp the rest of the story. We'll get to that. Swapped bodies with Surge because the Frozen Flame door will only open to Surge's specific biometric DNA, QNA, RNA. This is why Surge is the Chrono Trigger and the Arbiter of Fate, because he can decide the future of both worlds and literally open the door of fate. Simple, yeah? Ugh. We're gonna need more of this. This brings us to the present, where Link Surge rejoins Fate, and then, in the most JRPG shit ever, you fight Fate. Lynx, your plans end here, dude, because we're going to free humanity. Radical Dreamer style.
Dark Beam.
Oh, come on!
I lived my whole life according to the non-aggression principle, and now this, undone by a slack-jawed brute.
I'm Rand. I'm coming.
So, like, was I the only one who ever noticed that every single time we met him, he was just kind of talking through us and not to us? No? Nothing? All right then, cool, a different question. Remember when anyone would talk to me? Ever? No, me neither. So, you defeat Fate, returning free will to the world. Kid wakes up from her brainwashing and then decides to fuck around with the Frozen Flame because, remember in that scene you may or may not have watched, she hates the world, so she does something? For the longest time, I actually thought she instigated what happens next with the Frozen Flame because Harl tells her to stop. But apparently she's just trying to hit the tech stomp quota. So anyway. Oh, did you think we were done with the environmentalist messages?
Think again.
The dragons were actually imprisoned by Fate, and with Fate now dead, that means they want to kill all humans by summoning a giant T-posing tower. They then vor each other, combining into a super dragon god before ascending to the top. Also, Harl is a dragon. Aw shit, now we gotta fight the Draclussi. Turns out killing Fate was part of a different plan thought up by the dragons to obtain the Frozen Flame, which they want to use to power up and wipe out humanity. We're what now, 3 simultaneous convoluted plans deep? Kid is in another coma, classic Kid, but Masa and Mune tell Surge he can travel back in time to the moment Lynx destroyed her orphanage. What that will help, I don't know. And yeah, they can just do that. But we don't need to devolve into CinemaSins here. Let's just slap a Kino label on it and move on. Excellent! You brave the burning orphanage to save Kid and the other children, meeting with a Lynx and Harl of the past before they yeet out of there. After escorting everyone to safety, you watch with Kid as her home burns to the ground. She laments at how she'll be all alone, begging for the older Surge not to leave her. You say you never will, comforting her with a hug. He sheds a tear, which Kid feels. However, Surge's time in the past is up, so he vanishes, leaving a crying Kid to fend for herself alone in a cold new world as the camera pans up. All right. Energy is brought back down a little bit after all that. I just think
From Chronopolis on, the game's hitting its peak. It's long and messy, but it's so interestingly dense, and the world building is fascinating. It is a trope for JRPGs to physically manifest sources of internal conflict, but it's a trope for a reason because it owns so hard. Taking the concept of fate, that our thoughts and feelings are predetermined and therefore don't matter, and making it a robot backed up by a novel's worth of lore, and then giving you the opportunity to beat it up in turn-based combat, it is so on the nose, and I adore it all. I don't think everything's conveyed in the best manner, especially considering all the extra details about to be given to us by the exposition kids before the final boss, but this story holds up so much better than I remember. Kid finally wakes up, and you learn that every time Kid is in mortal danger, she disappears from time and reappears somewhere else with a lapse in memory and no pain. This explains why she can show back up if you don't get the antidote for her poisoning during the Gnome Zone. Just kidding, not this time of course, because this time Norris just showed up and he had a humor of a Hydra. You know, the thing that no one has. He just has one and he shows up off screen and just handles it. It's fine, I'm fine. She rejoins you, which allows you to make the dream team if you never got Glenn. Before T-Pose Tower, we have a couple things we need to do. There's an optional kid scene in Viper Manor where she can read a note from Luca, sharing her worries about the repercussions of their actions in stopping Lavos. That while they were able to save many lives, so many others that were to be born in the alternate future were snuffed out. That new suffering will naturally be born into their supposed peaceful future. And I just gotta say, thanks for the validation, Luca. Feels great. She also hints that Kid is a reincarnation of Shala and wishes her a happy future. Just back-to-back superb Kid scenes. I love it. When the writers have time to flesh Kid out, it's seriously some of the best content in the game. It's quite a shame that she doesn't really have as much screen time as she could when she spends most of the last 2 acts working with Lynx. And then oops, credits. I'm pretty sure this whole game was made to flesh out Kid more from Radical Dreamers and to wrap up the whole Shala plot point. So this is not the best. You can also combine the Tears of Love and Hate to create the title drop bait. Do you get it? I mean, it's okay if you don't. This is very complicated stuff. You have to have a high IQ to understand Chrono Cross. So, how the hell are we supposed to get up to that floating tower, you ask? I think we're forgetting something. A certain special boy?
Here comes the boy. Hello, boy. Welcome.
That's right, everybody. The true protagonist role has now been filled by Starkey. Step down, Surge. The day is saved. Using special alien technology found in his crashed spaceship at the bottom of the ocean, you slap it on your boat and it lets you fly. Fucking radical! It'd be cool if we could actually use it to fly around the map, but it leads to a cool FMV and it will get us into the endgame, so And speaking of the endgame, it's time to make your preparations in both dimensions. Our journey is reaching its end, so how fitting is it to take this time to check in on the people we met along the way? Surge himself has matured and grown on his adventure, used his pain, experiences, bonds, and struggles to find his true self. He's overcome his trauma, freed humanity from fate, and is now fighting with his friends to save the world from the mistakes of those who came before. Lena even mentioning how it feels like he's now distancing himself from her. Sorry, sweetie, don't date bigots. Alright, confession time. This is where I dropped the game on my first run. Terra Tower seemed long and I was already beyond mad at how different everything was, but I have to say, this time around, Terra Tower resonated with me. Nature battles for dominance against man-made architecture. Coral protrusions clash against the brick background, serving as a staircase up the tower. The landscape feels devoid of life, haunted by spirits that are driven only by vengeance. It's lonely. The chipper, funky soundtrack takes a backseat. It's replaced by a somber tone lingering in the background.
the sound of bells echoing throughout. The few sentient beings here offer Surge and friends a question. Are you willing to save humanity at the cost of more destruction? Are you doing the right thing? In a personal sense, you're merely acting in self-defense. You all didn't directly inflict suffering upon the dragon race or the planet, but that doesn't matter. It can't matter. To save humanity, you have no choice but to wipe out the remaining dragons. You're fighting to survive. If you think about it, that's what your party has been doing the entire game. We hurt others so we can stay safe, even if it leads to more hurt. Is this truly all we're capable of? That thought is all you have to ponder here. Last time I bemoaned the handling of the cycle of violence theme, and yeah, I think the no mark sucks, but I'm starting to warm up to Kato's handling of the subject matter more. That question is not answered yet, and the eventual answer might not satisfy all, but keep that in your mind. Reality bends around you. Eventually, you find yourself in a familiar place, in front of a familiar face. I've mentioned this earlier, but the mysterious prophet in Viper Manor is none other than Balthazar. Oh, and I guess he admitted everything is his fault as part of a 5D chess plan to save Shala from Lavos. I've actually gone over his exposition dump already, so you'll have to excuse me if I
once lived in the kingdom of Zeal. Yeah, we made Lavos everyone's problem.
Yep.
I went to the super future and created Chronopolis.
5-letter word starts with C-R-A.
Are you listening to me? I'm trying to tell you about the time crash.
Nah, I already tried crash. Thanks, though.
You damn Zoomers. No respect for your elders. You're ruining the environment with your damn phones and your gas-powered time machines and clothes that don't fit anyone.
Isn't the world currently facing, like, impending doom because of your generation?
No!
Before we leave, we finally learn what the Chrono Cross can be used for. It can cross space and time, transferring memories between dimensions. It's also an element, and when used, can unite the melodies of the world into a single healing harmony. Eventually, you reach the top of the tower, a structure so massive it pierces the atmosphere. Or maybe this is nighttime, but my interpretation is way cooler, so shut up. Space and shooting stars surround you. At the end of it all, you slowly climb the stairs as the pained words of the dragon god's anguish welcomes you. All living things need to kill one another in order to survive, fueling a cycle that has plagued the planet since birth. This time, the cycle of violence theme landed for me. The dragon god, tired of humanity hurting others, finds it necessary to take the mantle of judge and executioner. Its motives seem riddled with hypocrisy, but it acknowledges that hypocrisy as a necessary evil to cleanse humanity from the earth. After everything we've just learned about the dragons, we can now see exactly why they would be pushed to this conclusion. We can't sit back and abide by that logic, though. Neither party is inherently selfish here. It's just two groups fighting for what they believe is right. We win, but there's a bitter taste in our mouths as we consider the weight of what we've done.
I'm back, and I've updated Chronopedia.
Oh, god damn it! The Frozen Flame is actually a fragment of Lavos, which can take us to a super Lavos that exists in the far future called the Devourer of Time, which was formed by Lavos, Shala, and maybe the Dragon God. Possibly retconned back into Chrono Trigger via the DS ending? Balthazar wants us to travel to the end of time, where the Time Devourer is, so we can free Shala and humanity. But mainly Shala. He really likes Shala. Balthazar, dude, get a fucking hobby. Stop ruining everyone's lives with your silly little schemes. Terra Tower has collapsed, and your party looks out at it to ponder the future before their final fight. Kid's character arc comes to a beautiful conclusion here. There can be no return to normal after this moment. Destiny is finished, and humanity has to take responsibility for their part in the cycle of pain that caused all this chaos. Except the part that Balthazar caused? I guess he just fucked off, and he doesn't have to take responsibility. We return to where it all began. Opasa Beach. And this is where they ran out of money and decided to resolve the remaining plot threads in the game's last major tech stump. The biggest of them all, actually. Let's wrap this up with one final recap and go home. Kid is, and I quote, a daughter clone of Shala that went back in time to save Surge when Wazuki tried to drown him on Fate's orders. Wazuki was turned into a representation of Surge's trauma, a panther. And then he found his way into the military, I don't know. So yes, Lynx is your dad. Would have been nice if there was any amount of closure or foreshadowing for that entire story beat, but whatever. You know, I thought about never mentioning Lynx again after he died, like, ooh, it parallels the game, how deep. But fuck if this isn't a disappointing end to his arc. When I said Lynx sucked back in part 1, it was because of this. I can respect the tragedy in Wazuki's character, and you could argue that this kind of adds to it, but Lynx is a forgettable antagonist and a missed opportunity. At least you libertarians got some representation for once. Moving on. Project Kid was the name of Balthazar's convoluted nightmare plan, and it centered around Kid traveling back in time to when Surge was almost drowned by Wazuki to save him, which split the timeline. Lastly, the Chrono Cross must resonate with a specific tune in order to activate and save Shala from her imprisonment. Shala's been waiting specifically for Surge to save her for about 10,000 years, meaning this, right here, is the conclusion to both Chrono Cross and Kata's work on Chrono Trigger's Zeal arc, which he felt had gone unfinished. If you can't take the hint, this is a gimmick final boss, the king of all gimmick final bosses, and a culmination of the game's themes, represented through its gameplay. Now, if you want the true ending, you can't mindlessly kill the Time Devourer. Fighting this final boss is not a triumphant moment, or a dramatic necessary evil. The lack of music makes that clear. Now remember what the Ghost Kid said about the Chrono Cross. It gathers the sounds of the 6 elements. The future the radical dreamers strive for isn't one created through violence, but harmony. By using elements of each color in a specific order, you can compose a beautiful new melody, one that shines through the violence. The Time Devourer will interject with its own elements to break your rhythm in an effort to maintain the cycle, but you persevere until you get the melody down. And finally, use the Chrono Cross to free Shala. Love to hate, hate to love. Why are we born? Why do we die? Evolution? Survival of the fittest? What can be achieved by harming one another, killing one another? Each of us tries to do our best under the circumstances we are dealt. There's no such thing as a useless life. Perhaps every single thing in all of nature is just dreaming a dream of life. All of them are perhaps nothing more than dreams, dreamt by the planet before they're born. Eventually, all returns to the Sea of Dreams. We alone don't have the power to heal the world's woes or to solve all its mysteries. Yet, even then, thanks for being born, you. With the elements finally together in harmony, the fractured worlds unify. Surge's comrades bid him farewell, and he's told he can live the life he's always deserved. Kid tells him she'll find him, no matter how far apart they are, across time and space.
He then awakes on Opasa Beach, vague memories lingering from his long journey. With an unknown future ahead of him, he goes off to live his life to the fullest. After all, his summer is just getting started. And that's Chrono Cross. Nostalgic summer memories eternalized in one game, and one of my new favorites. Not every thread is resolved, and not every question is answered, but hey, that's life. We do our best with what's given to us and strive to be the best people we can despite that. Cross is a messy, uneven, yet ultimately beautiful game with ambition far exceeding its budget. It's not above criticism, but I can't help admiring it being so desperate to carve its own legacy, while in the monumental shadow cast by its predecessor. That deserves respect. Respect I didn't give it initially, because I was too stubborn to listen. Its final message might strike some as hopelessly naive, but I don't think so. The world can be a better place only when we choose to discard our greed and take responsibility for our actions. Other like-minded individuals are out there. Find them and take action. You don't have all the answers, but that's a good start. Chrono Cross actually brings up that acknowledging that we are faulty isn't really enough. We have to take accountability. This game isn't as consistent as Chrono Trigger, sure, but it's far more interesting. I can assure you, I'll think about Chrono Cross far more often than I will Trigger from now on. This is not the video series I was expecting to make when I went into this project. Far from it. I've grown a lot since first playing it. Hell, I've grown a lot since making that first video. When I was younger, I had a tendency to view storytelling as a checklist of story beats I felt needed to happen. That was 10 years ago, and I can say now that I regret experiencing art under such a clinical lens. Art does not need to be anything, and we shouldn't force it to be a certain way. How many stories do we rob ourselves of appreciating due to our own stubbornness? How many possible paths in life have we missed out on for that same reason? Relationships never formed. People never met. What happened to those what-ifs? We'll never know. All we can do is our best to make up for that lost time. Make peace with our regrets, but accept them. They're a part of you. I feel bad for viewing Kato and team's work in such a vitriolic bad faith, but this playthrough opened my eyes. And I think I'm ready to close the book on that part of my life now. Thanks for watching.
How about we play Radical Dreamers? That's fucking pretty good!
How did this all start? How long has it been since this retrospective began? Perhaps it's impossible to grasp the answer now, delays upon delays continuing to stack up against it. But for a certainty, back then, we loved so many, yet hated so much. We made fun of libertarians, improv'd every last burn. But despite it all, we analyzed like the best of the video essayists, whilst jokes echoed into crappy microphones. Here we are, part 3 of a 2-part retrospective. We've come a long way since almost, 2 years ago now? And it's December as of recording this. If this comes out in January, I'm sorry, okay? The final month in what I deemed the year of Chrono Cross. which admittedly did not amount to much outside of a mobile game tie-in and a remaster, but hey, when one of your favorite games gets its first re-release after 20 years, you take what you can get. The unfortunate life of being a Square Enix fan. Unless you're a Saga fan, then I guess you just win all the time and all of your remasters are great.
I gotcha, bitch, that's me! Minstrel Song HD is so good!
Chrono Cross The Radical Dreamers edition should have been a home run. When this was first announced, it felt like the universe was rewarding me after I had my come to Kato moment. I lost my mind during that Nintendo Direct.
This year,
two worlds cross in the triumphant return of this RPG classic. A remaster of the acclaimed RPG Chrono Cross is coming to the Nintendo Switch.
And everything they showed me after won me over completely. Battle improvements, an optional new graphics mode that looked great, and a localization of Chrono Satellaview adventure game. What could go wrong? LOL. Lamau even. There's a lot to be said about Chrono Cross. And that's because I've already said it. Yeah, guys, I'll be honest. That well has run dry after the last two videos in this series. If you haven't seen them, check them out if you want my takes on the gameplay and the story. This Chrono Cross section will be a footnote. I really just want to talk about what changes I liked and what bothered me in the remaster. The focus will be on Radical Dreamers, the ADV sequel to Chrono Trigger that was more or less dashed from canon and remade into the RPG that would become Chrono Cross. I feel like the diss has already been coursed to death in regards to the Cross remaster, so let's get the performance out of the way. This game runs bad, like worse than the PS1 version bad, which already ran kinda not great. I'll point you in the direction of Austin SV and Digital Foundry's videos on the remaster, which approach it from a more technical perspective and discuss why the frame rate is so rough. TLDR, they're essentially emulating this and then injecting higher quality assets right into the emulation, and then didn't or maybe just didn't have time to fully optimize it. There are some fan patches that say they fixed the frame rate, but I don't know, something's just kinda off about it to me. There's some that even promise 60 FPS, and I'll be honest, I just want a 30 FPS mod. I don't need anything more for this. 60 in this game would and does just kind of break the animations, like one of those nasty interpolated anime openings. Blech. If you play it with the original graphics, the game runs about how you'd expect, but I think this is a huge bummer for anyone who really digs what they did for the new graphics mode. Which, wouldn't you know, I'm bitches. This aesthetic, this one right here, this is the most Chrono Cross has ever been. Lead artist Nobutaro Yuki was brought back to redraw the entire cast's portraits. And remember, that's a lot of dudes. I think his style has improved immensely since his work on the original game too. It was always good, but this updated style of his feels so much more cozy. All the models are redone for the new mode as well, and I think they look wonderful. The backgrounds have a new watercolor aesthetic to them that appears to be the result of an initial run of AI upscaling and manual touching up. I think pure AI upscaling can work most of the time for pre-rendered PS1 backgrounds, but I think something would have been lost if Chrono Crosses looked too clean. Sterile is the last thing I want in my fun tropical JRPG, but that's just me. Let's see, you can turn off encounters now. Well, you basically turn off Surge's collision, but I dig it all the same. Turning off encounters might sound like cheating in a lot of old RPGs, but it works really well for this particular game thanks to its star level up system. If you only level up at bosses, you can afford to miss some trash mobs. Although in general, I just really appreciate this function in all of Square's remasters. Man, I can't wait for Xenogears Remastered to drop in the next few years with this feature, instantly turning that game from a 5 to a 9. Come on, it's my last episode here. Let me be a little mean to Gears fans. Have you seen Xenoblade 3? They've had it crazy good this year, it's just not fair. While I have my fair share of problems with this version, I'd still say I'll probably be revisiting this one in the future. I just adore the new art direction, and I think if I give it enough time, there'll be some kind of fan patch that'll really fix all the frame rate issues. And that's the remaster. Visuals good, I love the new music that plays exclusively in the launcher. Plays great, but the performance is But you might be curious if I've come up with any new opinions on Chrono Cross since playing this version. Well, Guile sucks, Pierre is great, Be Mean to Kid, Glenn's worth it, Fortragonia sucks, and I don't know. Hey Lynx, any new takes on the poor perhaps? What do you mean we couldn't get K-Bash back? He asked for how much money? So did you know the SNES could download shit in Japan? Well, now you do. The Satellaview was an add-on to the Super Famicom released in 1995, which expanded the capabilities of the little console to let you broadcast and download a variety of media, for a subscription fee of course. Quite ahead of its time really. I actually thought about buying one for this video to kind of show it off in B-roll, but I figured it wouldn't be worth spending hundreds of dollars just for one good shot. Especially when I've already hit my niche retro console quota for this year for just that purpose. Check out my Sega Saturn. I'm cooking something up good with this next year. Be excited. According to Wikipedia, there were 114 games released for download on this thing. That's kinda neat. So let's take a quick gander at its catalog. A lot of well-known third-party developers pitched into, they got cock on the Satellaview? And balls too? You cowards should have released this in the West! It seemed like a lot of Nintendo's most popular games got some form of Satellaview love, typically with a BS moniker slapped in front. I'm sure you've heard of Bullshit Zelda, but did you know they also made a Bullshit Dragon Quest? This new way to distribute games seemed like the perfect time for developers to experiment, so Square Enix got our favorite hot boy Masato Kato to help write and create a new Chrono Trigger game. This would be a text-based adventure game, known as Radical Dreamers, which was later stated by Kato to be made with the intent of wrapping up plot threads that he thought were unfinished. How successful he was in doing that? Well, none of that matters. Why? Radical Dreamers is the coolest Chrono entry. Yes, I will die on that hill. Also, while I approached Cross in a kind of recap/spoiler style of review, I don't really want to do that here. I'll be talking about Radical Dreamers' story and themes from a distance, cause it's basically a new game from a Western perspective. Game's just neat as hell, so I want to talk about the parts of it that I really adore. Radical Dreamers was the prototype for Cross's story, featuring the small band of thieves known as the Radical Dreamers. Surge, Kid, and Gil. They plan on breaking into the mysterious Viper Manor on a dark night to steal the mystical Frozen Flame. Sound familiar? I think it's really cool to see the foundation of that iconic dungeon. And from the perspective of someone who played Cross first, see it fleshed out into its own game with an entirely different tone. Surge, given his status as the point of view character, even has a personality now. and dialogue. He's fantastic too. No drip whatsoever though, like seriously. What's with this sleepy cab ZZZ ass wizard fit? Ugly, dripless, dry, but personality-wise, I adore him. He's sassy, has a lazy streak, feels aimless in life, is into music, and is hopelessly crushing on his friend Kid. You know, basically everything I had canon in my videos outside of the whole music thing. I mean, for all we know, he could have a SoundCloud album, but still, we take those. What I do like about him in comparison to his RPG counterpart is that he's not special. He's just a simple guy, no weight of the world on his shoulders or any grand sense of destiny. I think this works wonders here. It's Surge who becomes a small part in Kid's story, not the other way around. But despite being a small part, depending on your choices in your playthrough, Kid can start to see Surge as an equal and their bond will deepen as the night plays out. I have to say, I like Kid a lot in this game too. She's more bitter than her RPG version as well, and while RD technically isn't canon, I just like to fill in the gaps of her character in Cross with what she had going on here. It leads to a better character in my opinion, so fuck it. That's right everybody, toss out canon, become ungovernable. Gil is there. I like him, I guess, maybe even a lot. Guile arguably should have just been him. And hey, with this re-release, he is now. Which won't really mean much if this is the last Chrono game, but who knows what they're cooking. I think Gil is a solid mentor character, very solemn, but he's at his best in RD's comedic side endings that unlock after your first playthrough. Which, hey, that's a thing. They're cool, but let's put a pin in that for now. As I said before, the entire game takes place in a single night, with Surge and friends making their way through the dark hallways of Viper Manor, slowly but surely solving its secrets. I realize the implication so far has been that this is the weird Chrono entry that ditched the RPG stuff, but that's not really the case. This is actually still an RPG, just a simplified one presented as a text adventure. There are still random encounters, pseudo dungeon crawling, a health system for your main character, and even bonding points decided by your actions. That last one is one of the key things that will decide your ending on the first run, by the way. As you're exploring the manor, RD will throw an enemy at you with random but predictable outcomes and ideal strategies for each enemy type. If you take damage and perform poorly in battle, Kid will end up thinking less of you. At worst, you might even die and get a game over, so make sure to save often. You only have 3 slots, make them count. I have faith in you. Surge will report on his health in the narration before you go back to exploring the castle. But don't worry too much, because there are specific events that can pop up that can restore your health. If you do good in battle, on the other hand, Kid will think more highly of you, which is reflected in her remarks to Surge after each fight. It's a cool system, and when you understand what each line means, you can game it with little issue. Although granted, it's a lot to get used to on your first run, but just make the choices that seem like the ones you'd make in real life and have fun with it. When you think of Chrono, I'd guess the word atmosphere might not dominate the discussion. Not because the series lacks it by any means, but because people tend to focus on the RPG parts of the RPG. Radical Dreamers had a lot to scrounge around for in Trigger's DNA, and it chose just that. Atmosphere, and in my opinion, rightfully so. The way this game weaves together its art, oppressive soundtrack, and brilliant writing goes beyond a chef's kiss. That chef is giving you tongue, my dude, and it tastes great. This game made me want to take a shower in all the best ways. I didn't think a group of the Chrono devs could essentially make a horror game, but they nailed it. Viper Manor has this unnerving energy to it, with each door possibly leading you to a new horror. By nature of how the building's designed, it also lets us see into the mind of Lynx, and better builds up his character with environmental storytelling. Seriously, I cannot get over how much I adore this game. Every aspect of its art direction is interwoven to make the SNES sing. I've never seen Mode 7 used this way, and after this, I don't know if I want to see it used any other way. And don't even get me started on how this game uses sound to its advantage. I don't know how they got the sound chip to produce these kind of results, but like, listen to this.
I would kill you. In the very self-same way I will kill the taxation system in this country. I mean, think about it. A voluntary system would not be oppressive. Who wouldn't chip into the road voluntarily?
Now, you might think I'm being a bit hyperbolic. Me? Surely not, but I'm already a huge ADV/VN head, so seeing one this old hit these kinds of highs just makes me giddy. Radical Dreamers shines best in crafting a world filled with boundless potential, even though we only got to see a sliver of it. All three Chrono games share the same world, but Radical Dreamers feels mature, compelling, and complex in a way that the other two just don't. Seeing so much talent and artistry being used to focus on delivering a story-driven experience makes it hard to not love Radical Dreamers despite its faults. Which, yeah, there are some, mostly with the writing. But before you jump the gun, remember, this is me we're talking about. The guy who spent an hour defending Chrono Cross's story because he liked the vibes.
It makes no damn sense. Compels me though.
So, of course, I'd come away from that game's older brother having a fantastic time. Having said that, I think where this game kind of fumbles is its conclusion. Without getting too into spoilers, I think the themes don't really come together in a cohesive way at the close of the narrative. You could argue that this entire trilogy, especially the first one, is focused more on entertainment over theming, but for the story-driven adventure game of the bunch, I was hoping for a tad more. Also, because this was the blueprint for what later became Cross's story, fans going backwards will have some of the bigger twists revealed already. The initial ending is sudden. When you first beat it, one would think that the game is pushing you in the direction of pursuing the other endings, each framed as different tales in Surge's journey to get the full picture. But their tones lean far more humorous, and it gets downright hilarious at times. But hey, if you take them for what they are, they're great. I don't want to get into them in detail because that's the functional equivalent of explaining a joke, but I will say they are worth seeing even if they don't add to the main narrative. It seemed like something that ADV titles of this era just did, throw in some fun, hidden joke roots after the serious main story is concluded. I mean, maybe I'm talking out of my ass, but this at least reminded me of another sound novel that was originally released on the same system, Kamaitachi no Yoru, also known as Banshee's Last Cry in the West if you're into lost media. You actually cannot play this game anymore. It was the only official localization of this game, it released only on mobile, specifically iOS, and it was heavily Americanized. Granted, I still liked it for what it was, but hey, Spike Chunsoft, I'm pretty sure you guys have the rights, and I know there's a modern remake. Why don't you guys show us a little love, huh? None of the endings offer definitive closure to the original story, but if you'd allow me to analyze anyway, this falls in line with Kato's ideas for the eventual Chrono Cross. This isn't a story where explicit closure works, as much as we'd like there to be some. This is, perhaps, a more cynical take on that story, but not overly so. Life, as much as we might wish otherwise, doesn't always offer us concrete answers. We do not live in a fairy tale, and things can end suddenly without warning. Happiness may be fleeting, but that doesn't make life devoid of meaning, or happiness unobtainable. Even if temporary, that doesn't make it any less valuable. I think the message I've discovered throughout my time with both Radical Dreamers and Chrono Cross is one about connecting with others. It's important to cherish the time you have with those you care about whenever you get a chance, because they might not be there tomorrow. I had no idea where this retrospective would go when I began the project. It took a lot out of me. I've had Chrono Cross on my mind for almost 2 years straight now. Because of that, I'll probably spend the rest of my life thinking back fondly on this time. That's something a mediocre remaster can't change. I've already said I feel like a different person since I've started this series, but I feel like I've continued to grow and improve myself even since that last video. I don't think Chrono Cross is entirely responsible for that, but it's been a good companion along the way as I come to terms with regret, loss, the mistakes of my younger self, and grief. I appreciate that these two games exist, that they tap into such raw human emotions, and that by disregarding mass appeal, they're able to speak to people with very specific problems. I couldn't appreciate that then, but I definitely do now. These games are works of art. Really not much else to say about them. So, for the last time, thank you all for joining me on this little experiment. I appreciate that you gave these the time of day, and I'll see you guys next time. Happy holidays, and thanks for watching.